The mind map strategy. Step 1 is to skim through the first paragraph. Remember, you just have to skim through. You don't have to get into the details, the nuances of the paragraph. Then you have to take your eyes off the screen and ask yourself the purpose of the paragraph you just read. The purpose must be very, very brief. It should not be a summary of what you read. It should be only the purpose. Why am I making this video? The details, reading comprehension, mind map strategy, all that is not needed. Why am I making this video? What is the purpose? The purpose is to teach. See just 2 words. Why are you watching this video? GMAT, reading comprehension, verbal. All of that is not important. You are watching this video to learn. Remember, the purpose has to be always very, very brief. So step 1 was to skim through the first paragraph. Then you take your eyes off the screen. Step 2, ask yourself the purpose of the paragraph you just read. Make sure that it is very, very brief. If it is long, you are not applying the strategy properly. Avoid paraphrasing the details. It has to be just the purpose. Skim through the next paragraph now. Same thing. Take your eyes off the screen and ask yourself the purpose of the paragraph. And an extra step this time. This is to link the purpose of the second paragraph with the purpose of the first paragraph. So this way, the purpose of each paragraph would get linked, and a map of sorts would be made. The next step is to keep repeating step number 3 for all the subsequent paragraphs, which means that you skim through the paragraph, take your eyes off the screen, ask yourself the purpose of the paragraph, and link this purpose with the purpose of each of the earlier paragraphs. That's the strategy. For structure-based questions, you need not go back to the passage. Just the map will make it easy for you to solve the question. For fact-based as well as inference-based questions, refer back to the passage, but only to the relevant part, because while making the mind map, you would have understood that which information lies in which part of the passage. So this is a structured approach, and this ends up saving a lot of time while enhancing the accuracy. Let's imagine an RC. Imagine a reading comprehension. In the first paragraph, a new scientific discovery has been discussed in great detail. The second paragraph talks about various positives about the scientific discovery. The third paragraph talks about various negatives of the discovery. Then there is a last paragraph that compares the positives and negatives and concludes that positives of the discovery outweigh the negatives. What would be our mind map for such a comprehension? First paragraph. The purpose is to introduce a discovery. Second paragraph. The purpose is to discuss the positives. Third paragraph. The purpose is to discuss the negatives. And last paragraph. The purpose is to conclude that positives outweigh the negatives, or that the discovery is useful. See how brief the mind map is? If you are getting into the details, you are not doing it right. So, for such an imaginary RC, what if we had a structure-based question? What is the tone of the passage? This is a structure-based question. For such a question, we do not have to go back to the passage, and just the mind map would suffice. Option A, argumentative. Maybe this should stay for now. Appreciative. No, because the passage also talks about the negatives of the discovery. Demeaning is a very strong choice. Such strong tonality is seldom correct on the GMAT. Analytical. This should stay. Supportive. Same problem. The passage also talks about the negatives. And see, option B and option E are very similar in nature. When 2 options mean the exact same thing, the chances are rife that both of them are going to be incorrect. E should also be eliminated. It's between A and D now. Which one is better? Look at the mind map again. Something was introduced. Positives were discussed. Negatives were discussed. And then, after the comparison between the positives and negatives, a conclusion was drawn. This is a very analytical approach towards the subject. And therefore, D is a better choice. A can be eliminated, and D can be chosen. So this is how the mind map strategy helps you particularly well in structure-based questions. For fact-based or inference-based questions, you can go back to the relevant part of the passage, and after due deliberation, answer the questions. This was the concept, friends. GMAT shots are deliberately kept brief. For an elaborate explanation, please watch the Stage 1 conceptual videos in our program. Thanks for watching.